already established that you are the longest standing active member here at Hahira Methodist Church. Is that right?
That's right.
Good, good. So we're going to pick you a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about our forefathers, the church planters, and kind of what you can remember about the early days of the church. The church is 122 years old, and we had a 100-year centennial in 1991 with a big celebration, and we did a good bit of church history then, and we even went over to Epworth and got some out of the archives over there. But they didn't mention your name, so we're going to pick you for what you know. When did you come to the church?
When I was a baby.
Uh-huh. And when was that?
1932. 31. That's part of this.
So when did your mom and daddy come to Hahira Methodist Church? Were they founding members?
In the 20s.
Okay, so they were here 30 years later then, approximately. About it. What are some of your earliest memories here? Just right off the top of your head.
Well, one of the first things that I can remember about is the pews that we had in the church at that time. And of course our church wasn't as big as it is now. But the pews were made out of 12-inch boards, and they had some backrests nailed together to make the backrest for them.
No padded pews, huh?
No padded pews.
All right. What about electricity? Any electricity that you can remember at that time?
Well, we have always had some electricity, as long as I can remember.
Okay.
What kind of heat did you have?
2 coal heaters, mostly one right here, where the pulpit is right now.
Coal, actual coal.
Coal.
About that.
And
I
they get
never experienced
coal at the
heat.
hardware store and bring it up here in a bag and put it out behind the church there.
Marcia, when did you join the Jordan family?
We married on New Year's Eve, 1955, and I became a member then in January of '56. And one of my memories was H.M. Barfield telling me about when they'd have charge conference, it was called back then. And the church was it was up high, and H.M. said I'd crawl under the church and stay there till the DS got through talking, and then I'd go in and eat all the fried chicken I could eat.
Brady, when I came to this church, or when I married into the Jordan family, the first thing that I really recall is Papa and Mama Jordan. That was the name. That was all I knew about was Papa and Mama. And when I came into the church, that was one of the things that I noticed, that everybody called him Papa and Mama. Everybody called him Papa.
That's
Papa
right.
Jordan.
That's
You'd
right.
see him around town, and he was Papa Jordan.
He was Papa to everybody, his children and his grandchildren.
And everybody in town.
And everybody in town. And another thing that I remember here is there would be little step stools. I especially remember at the water cooler there was a little step stool, and I know Papa had made that, and there were other little things around. So obviously he had a big leadership role in his church.
Yes, he
What was some of the things that he did that you remember, and that even I can remember to some degree?
Well, he was treasurer for many years, and he also was the janitor for some time. He cleaned the church besides being the treasurer.
Okay.
And being treasurer is not exactly like it back then like it is now. He would get people to post-date their checks for a year. And they would turn them all in, all 12 checks. He would take them to the lockbox at the Citizens Bank, And then the first day of every month, you could see him leave his little office and go to the bank and get all those checks and deposit for that month. So back then, you better be sure you had the money in the bank to cover your tithe or your gifts.
And did you ever have a problem? Did he ever have a problem with the finances? Did he ever have to?
Well, and lots of times, those checks were not enough to cover the expenses of the church. And he'd have to go out sometimes and beg people for money. And he did that many, many times. And I can remember what the church paid the preacher the first time that I was aware of it was $2,400.
Wow.
Times have changed since then.
But that's even pretty good, considering the
Back then.
times back then.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Times were pretty hard.
Well, I know that I've heard Gail, and maybe Gail, it's time for you to just to tell us kind of what you felt when you came here, and then let's relate it back to where Brady can remember and see if kind of what our forefathers had passed on to this church family when you came into it. Let's get a feel for that before we go on.
All right. I came, and I think it's been about 20 years ago. And I thought I was coming to minister through music, but I found as soon as I got here that it was a place where I was ministered to. There was such a love and a welcome to me. The Spirit of God was just here. And that's not changed in the whole time I've been here. This is a place of welcome, a place of love. It's becoming more and more a house of prayer. We have such great youth program. When I first came here, there were youth here, but I don't remember them participating as they do now. And I don't. Men have taken up leadership positions now where they weren't doing that as much when I first came here. There have been some changes in the way things are done, but there's never been any change in the love and in the acceptance, the welcome. And this is one of the places where I feel comfortable. If I have a need of any kind, I can tell someone and I don't hear it back later on as gossip. I mean, it's just something that's not, you don't hear here. There's so many good...
You ministered to us too, Gail.
Thank you. But it's just a place where God put me when I needed to be here, and I'll be here until He tells me to move on, I guess.
And I can understand that well, because when we came, I came from a little country church, and this was a big city church to me then. And one of the things that I felt when we left that morning was this is where God wanted us to be. That this was our church family, and that's 40 years ago.
Thank the Lord.
Gail mentioned about the men taking more participation now. Back in the 70s, there was a group of ladies, because we didn't have any men who were taking leadership. So we would meet here at this altar once a week and pray for God to bring about some men to lead this church like the Lord wanted them to. And he answered our prayer. It wasn't the next day or the next month, but it happened. And he did.
I can remember when the women used to run the church, really.
And I know it couldn't have always been that way, Brady, because when I was doing a little research, there were 14 original members,
Yeah.
founding members. And one of them was Mr. W.W. Webb. And we have a family worshiping here now that is descendants of Mr. W.W. Webb.
Right.
He is Mark Graham's great-grandfather, and Maddie and Webb's great-great-great-grandfather. And that,
I remember
don't
him
you
very
think
well.
that Mr. Webb would be so blessed to know that his descendants are still worshiping this church.
Amen.
And we're really here to talk about, I guess, how our forefathers sacrificed and how they had the vision of Matthew 28, which was just to go and make disciples of all nations. And wouldn't he be so blessed to know that he still has descendants worshiping this church right now?
Yes, he would.
So, what we're celebrating today isn't so much what's happened in the last 5 or 6 years, but what started 122 years ago when these 14 people had a vision of a church family here in Hahira.
God had his hand.
Church.
God had his hand on them for sure.
And during this last ministry campaign of making a difference through making disciples, which I'm sure that phrase will be used throughout our celebration all the way through, which was a phrase or a statement that became a part of the celebration that we're into at the moment. But another phrase that came up and has been used over and over and over is that what God originates, he orchestrates. And what statement can pull 122 years ago to today and unite it's just a God thing. It is. It's a God thing.
It's changed many lives since I've been here.
Well, you know, my children visit from out of town, and they have all said, you know, if we lived closer, we'd be here in this church, because they have been recipients the times they've been here of the love and the welcome and the caring and the spirit of this church, which is the Holy Spirit's just here. And it's, you know, it's evident in the way people treat each other.
I was so excited when I heard Gail was coming to be our pianist, because I thought, it can't be Gail, because I graduated with Gail's husband, Dwayne, now. Of course, I wasn't near as old as him. Anyway.
God help me.
When Gail walked in that Sunday, and they said, Gail Skiles, and it just tickled me, and I walked up to her, and she couldn't believe it either.
I remember that, and I recognized you immediately. You haven't changed that much.
Thank you.
And the second person was Joyce.
It was?
It was.
I didn't know that.
You came right up and talked to me. I played the organ, and
Isn't God great?
he
And I
is.
didn't know Gail ahead of time. For all of you that are listening, I did not know Gail before that. Let's talk a little bit about the sacrifices, Brady. When the church burned twice within 5 years, and then it was built the third time, and part of what we're in here now is part of that third building. It's behind the walls, but a little bit of it's here from what I understand. But after World War I, the center of the H over there was added to the church. And from the research that we did, that was a very unusual building and how it took place. Can you tell us just a little bit about how that came about? Yeah, that center part right there?
Yeah, my understanding was that my father and my brothers helped build some of that building that was built from houses that belonged to Mr. Bryan. And he donated those houses to help us build that part of the building.
And I think from some of the history that we read that there was an abandoned church out in the community too, that the lumber from it was used. But going back to Mr. Bryan would be blessed today too, because
Yes,
he
would.
has descendants in this church.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. Who are they, Marcia?
Well, Virginia Coppage, that was her father-in-law,
Right.
her first marriage, and
Deanna.
Yeah,
Deanna and Doug.
and
Deanna Tolson. Yeah. Mr. Bryan was her great-great-grandfather. I believe it's right.
No, they.
I believe that's right. If we're not factual here, we'll find it out. But I think that's pretty
And
close.
Ruth Reddy did so much for this church.
Yes.
And Ruth,
That was her daddy.
her daddy.
Okay. in 1954, the wing that we know as the children's wing over here, that's named in, it's in honor of your family name, was built. And I understand at the same time that the church, more or less within that same time era, that the church was bricked with this white stone, white sand brick that's on the buildings now that makes this Methodist church known as the white church on the corner.
That's right.
Versus the red church across the street. You know, that's the way I had always heard it growing up. What was it used for when that wing was built?
Well, Jordan Hall was built as a social hall, and above it was classrooms, and there was quite a few classrooms up there at the time.
But we also met in there with our Sunday school class.
Right.
And as I remember, there came a time in the life of the church when after we came, that we couldn't all meet, like we had revival, we couldn't all meet in there at one time to eat because the building,
right.
the room just got too small, and I think it would hold about 80 people. And now we know it is the children's wing, and that has even been renovated since it became the children's wing over there. What did Papa have to do with the building of that
He
building?
just thought he was overseer. He just thought he had to come and see it every day.
More than once a day, several
Well, they
times.
wanted to be sure it was right.
Mr. Tally Miley is the one that built it. He was a contractor.
It was also right busy when you put 200 people in there for June's wedding reception.
Yeah, I remember a wedding in there too that was full.
Kind of crowded was
Yes, it was crowded.
In the essence of time, we're gonna have a timeline on the tables for everybody to take home with them that shows the acquisitions and the additions and the renovations all the way up to date now. So we'll kind of leave that for a minute, and I just would like to ask you, what, you were here then and now, and we came from 14 members 122 years ago to over 500 today, and I don't know what that exact number is, because we had a large group join us this past Sunday. What do you feel, is anything different? Is anything the same?
The Holy Spirit.
How so?
I feel like the Holy Spirit is here more now than it was then.
But do you think that maybe it's just because there are more people here for the Holy Spirit to live in? Is that possible?
Yes, it was, because whenever I first started coming here, we would have a good crowd if we had 85. Some days, even less than that. But that would be a good crowd.
And we had 287 probably this past Sunday in here.
Right.
But I also think the congregation has grown in our love
They
for the
definitely
Lord.
have grown.
I think so, since I've been here. And you know, it's really good for me that when I first came, all the Bible studies that we had were on Wednesday night, and I had choir practice, so I couldn't go. And now we have Bible studies. I guess there's something going on for probably every day of the week, so that's a good thing. And I think that makes a difference also.
Very good thing.
And I'm astounded when I go to some of these Bible studies led by young ladies at the spiritual maturity that these people have. I'm just so pleased to be studying under them, with them.
And the forwardness with our youth and children with their faith.
It's wonderful.
That was something that is so different from when I was a child, is how willing they are to step up and speak, to share their faith, and to study. We were not that involved when I was a child, and does that mean that we didn't the Holy Spirit wasn't within us? I don't think so, but I just think that for us looking back and at our age, we can recognize things that we couldn't recognize when we're there in the midst of it.
That's true.
Another thing that makes me happy is when the younger people, like in the Matty Webb circle, decided some of us older ones could take a rest from the bridal showers, and because it used to be a few of us that had to do that all the time, and now we can come and enjoy being with them and not have to do the work.
That's good, yeah.
Well, kind of in winding down, a question that I had for myself and for us, I guess, is we talked about Mr. Webb and his descendants that are here, and Mr. Bryan and his descendants that are here, and the Jordan descendants that are here. And there are probably more, but those are just the ones we think of right now. Is we know that our forefathers had vision, and they prepared and they planned ahead, really not knowing that they were going to have descendants 122 years later here, but they planned forward. Are we doing the same thing? Are we as diligent, as faithful as they were? And looking ahead enough spiritually as well as our physical plan to make sure that that Jeremy's children and grandchildren are going to have the same opportunities spiritually as we have.
I sure hope so.
God will raise up those two. If we don't already have them, they will be here when it's done.
Okay, so what do we tell our young church family? And we are evolving into a younger church family all the time. What do we tell them? How do we prepare them to
listen to the Lord's leading, to be obedient, to be sure and share Jesus with every opportunity they can.
And cover them with prayer.
And let's don't forget how special Dr. Parrott's Sunday school class was all the years that Dr. Parrott, when I first started here, he was teaching Sunday school, and he taught, I don't know how many years, but I think about what a special time that was.
At least 50 years.
some more of those generation to generation faithful?
To begin with, it was just a ladies' class when I first came, and then it became a co-ed.
Thank y'all for sharing. We could go on and on with this, but we don't have the time in our hour and a half that we're going to be in worship today, and it's just a blessing to be able just to sit together, even if we're doing it for the camera and for everybody else. It's personal to me.
It's been
To know
good
that
for me.
we're going to be a part of 122 years
Our
later.
history.
Yes.
Thank you,
Thank
Joyce.
y'all.
But it's been
Thank you.
good for me to hear all of this. I didn't know some of it. I've heard some of it, but it's just a blessing.
Well, we didn't even scratch the
blessing.
surface. We didn't, but we got enough that when we start looking at the timeline, we can start asking some questions if we want to. Thank y'all. Thank you,
Thank you.
Jeremy.